Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Paranormal Peeps podcast. We are super glad you guys decided to come back and take a listen to us again.
Woo!
Yeah.
Yay!
Don't everybody get all excited at once.
Well, Josh, you got to hold up those cards that tell us what to say. Those
We
prompt
need the applause card.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
next time.
Okay.
Next time. We got a fun and exciting show for you guys today. But before we get there, let's find out who we got around the table. So to my left,
Jamie
And Elisa.
and I'm Josh, and we have a very special guest for everybody today. Why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Wendi from the Demolished Salt Lake podcast.
Woo! Welcome.
Woo!
Wait, that got more cheers than me?
Hey,
Well,
this is
she's a guest. Come on.
Oh, that's fair.
We see you every time.
Just tell us real quick a little bit about your podcast and what got you into it.
So my podcast, I talk about buildings that no longer stand in Salt Lake, and occasionally I head out of Salt Lake too, around the state. But I use the building as a way to talk about the community, the people that built the building, the people that went through its doors, the city, the history. So it's a really great jumping off point to get a really good overview of the history of Salt Lake.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
And that plays so nicely into what we do.
I know.
Yes.
Like, you can do all the work for us.
We now have our own historian on temporary staff.
Anytime.
So what got you into it?
I started off as an Instagram account, just posting. I had this idea that I would just find a demolished building, post it and say, oh, this was the hospital. It was built here and demolished here. And that was basically what I was just to tell people about buildings. But then I started realizing there's a lot of stories, and then there's more stories. And it became more than what I wanted to do in an Instagram post. So I decided I would throw it all in a podcast and do half-hour episodes about some really cool stuff that's happened in Utah that maybe you had never heard of before.
That's way cool.
Yeah, that is super cool. And especially important for those of us who moved to Utah like 6 years ago. We definitely don't know anything
No.
about the history.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm telling you, I am learning. I grew up here, and I learn things all the time.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
I bet.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so thank you for having me on. I'm
Yes,
excited
Well,
thank
you're
you for
welcome.
being
We're
here.
excited.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to let everybody know about a couple save the dates coming up. So we'll start with October 15th. We are going to be having our first real ever public investigation
Yep.
at Petite Meat Museum.
In Payson.
Yeah, in Payson, Utah.
Yes.
So,
My hometown.
and it's a great place to investigate. And if you guys haven't been there, it used to be a school and is now a museum. And some people took dance there or still take dance there, actually.
Well,
I
not
used to.
Elisa. She used to, but
I'm a wee bit old for that now. But,
You're never too old to dance.
well,
She could pull out her
It just
dance
might look
moves
funny
during
now.
I might look a little bit jiggly.
You can dance during the investigation.
there you go.
know.
Entertainment.
So yeah, that's going to be October 15th. And you're going to be able to find tickets for that on Eventbrite. Come and get some tickets and come hang out with us for that night.
Yes, and we're only selling a limited number, so
Yeah,
get in there and get yours.
exactly.
Hey, you get to do two things there. You get to see a historically significant building
Yep.
that has
Yes.
been saved and hunt ghosts.
Right.
Exactly.
It's a win-win.
It is. Best
Can't
of
go
both
wrong.
worlds.
No, you cannot. And then the second one to save is October 29th.
Yes, we will be out at the Great Benson Grist Mill. We're actually going to be doing a costume contest there as well. So it's a costume contest and paranormal investigation.
Where else could you get to go? One, to a historic location and see lots of fun places.
Mm-hmm.
2, investigate ghosts. And 3, do it as Dracula.
Or whatever other creature or whatever you want.
Exactly.
And dress up.
I don't want 40 Draculas there. I mean,
That could be fun.
I don't know.
The vampire ghost hunt.
Okay. Not the route we were going. But anyways, bring your best costume. There will be prizes for first, second, and third place. We'll also have some door prizes.
Yep.
A couple games.
Some light refreshments.
Yes.
And of course, Ghosts.
Ghosts.
Yes.
The best part.
Got goodies and everything. So
Exactly.
it's going to be fun.
And just in case it gets cold, just so you guys know, we're going to have heaters. So there will be a place to get warm.
Yeah, those big porch heaters, those
Yep.
tall ones. So, and we will be serving hot cocoa and hot cider as well.
Yes.
Candy, snacks. All
Fun,
the
good stuff.
Nice.
All the good stuff.
So definitely that will be on Eventbrite. So please, everybody come and join us and have some good times.
Yes, get your tickets while they last.
And now on to the fun part.
Yes, what are we talking about today?
We are going to talk about probably the place that most people don't always know about here in Utah.
I didn't.
No, I didn't know either. And while it once was a massive, huge military installation, it has now been relegated to a single building.
Pretty
Which
much.
is so sad because there was so many of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to believe they get down to just one.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you guys don't know yet, we're going to be talking about Camp Floyd.
Yeah.
So why don't you lead us off, Wendi? What you got?
All right. So, Camp Floyd. Let's go back to. I always seem to find on my episodes, I always seem to start with, all right, now remember, Brigham Young showed up in 1847, but I am going to do that on this one. So Brigham Young showed up in 1847, and a couple of years later, they tried to get statehood, didn't get it, so instead they got territorial. They were awarded territorial status in 1850. Soon the federal officers began to realize that Brigham Young had just a bit too much power, and they didn't like that. So they sent a guy named Judge Drummond and his mistress. Okay, they sent a guy with a mistress to a Mormon town.
Well, they don't want to send the wife because
Right?
I don't know why.
So they send this guy, Judge Drummond, in 1856, and he is driven out of town. They drive him out. This makes him very mad. So he goes back to Washington, to President Buchanan, and starts telling him all of these stories about how there's all this this lawlessness going on in Utah, and they're not true, but
Right.
he's mad, right? Well, President Buchanan says we can't have that. We're going to pull Brigham Young from being governor, but we should send some troops because Brigham Young might not like this transition. So they send about 250 men to Utah. And they get stopped at the border by 5,000 of Mormon men, right? And they keep him there throughout the winter. I mean, these guys had a horrible winter in Wyoming. They lost
that's
a
awful.
lot of their food. They lost their livestock until finally there was a compromise made and they were allowed to come into Utah. But they weren't allowed to be anywhere near Salt Lake. So they marched through the city and then out to what's now Fairfield. And that's where they established Camp Floyd.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know where Fairfield's at, if you look at Utah Lake, the tip of Utah Lake, and you go about 12 miles ish northwest from there, you'll run into what's called Fairfield.
It's a lot smaller than it was back then.
Yeah. And at one point in time, it was the third largest city in the state of Utah.
I have that on my history. Look at that. So they all get here, right? And then they realize there is no lawlessness. There's just people trying to live and survive and do their thing. So they don't leave. They set up camp. And at one point, like you said, it was between everyone living in the fort and then everyone living outside of the fort. It was the third largest city in the state. There was about 350 buildings. Think the main street was like a mile long. I mean, this was a big town, right? People weren't too happy with the soldiers coming in because they brought debauchery with them.
Right.
So
Gambling and
Fairfield
drinking.
was called Frogtown, and there was a bunch of drinking and gambling, and no one thought that was a great idea. So they didn't enjoy that. But the camp was boring. There was nothing for the soldiers to do. So what else were they going to do but start drinking and gambling, right?
Right.
Yeah. But the bright side is that the soldiers brought economy.
They did.
Much needed economy because they would buy stuff off of the Mormons and then they would hire the Mormons out for like labor and stuff. So they actually were helping the economy move forward.
Well, they were. The part that's actually kind of crazy, right, is that summer was one of the worst summers that they ever had here in Utah. And there was crop loss, famine. Like the state was actually ready to collapse.
Yeah.
And so now all these guys come in and they start doing business with the Mormons here. And they're like, it was actually their saving grace.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, they helped make it through. So in 1861, the camp was ordered to pack up and move out. So, okay, give you guys a chance to answer a history question. What happened in 1861 that would cause all the men to leave Utah?
Civil War.
Well, I was going to say the
Run!
Revolutionary War, but I'm pretty sure that was a little too early.
Just a smidge.
100 years.
Give or take.
Yeah.
Yes. So the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
So they rounded up all the troops and they all went back east to fight in the Civil War. And that left all these buildings. So people went in and just took down all the bricks from the buildings, all the adobe, took them away and built other stuff with them. And soon there was no site left of the camp anymore because they sold off parts of the camp for homesteaders. And then what was left just kind of, fell away to time. And today, like you said, the only thing that's left of the camp is the commissary,
Yep.
which is where the museum is, and the cemetery.
Yes.
So the commissary was actually sold at auction, and a family bought it and used it as their home.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So
That place is tiny.
Yeah.
yeah. So they used it as their home, and then now it is the museum. But yeah,
Oh, wow. I never knew that.
Do you know the name of the family that owned it by chance?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember that either. I did read that.
That's
Hold
so
on.
cool.
Let me see if I can find it. It was sold to the Beardshaw family. And it says, so they got it in auction in 1861 when the army was recalled to the Civil War, and the building was relocated to its current site where the family used it as their home.
Oh, that's crazy.
Because so it wasn't actually ever really there. It got moved
to there.
That's not surprising.
No.
Yeah.
So across the street from the commissary is the Stagecoach Inn.
Yes.
That started off as just a gentleman's house. And when they were building the road through Utah to California, the guy who lived there remodeled it to make it the Stagecoach Inn. And it was a stop on the overland stagecoach.
Yeah, that was George Carson.
That's right. The Carson house.
Yes. And he actually was his family, his sons, and two other people, I cannot remember their names. They were the founders of Fairfield.
They founded it.
They founded the city. So they're the first pioneers who actually moved to Fairfield. And so when they got there, the point where that Stagecoach Inn was, they actually built a fort. And so they had the wood barricade up around it. And that's where they all lived until it became Camp Floyd.
Camp Floyd.
And then they took it down and he built his house and became the Stagecoach Inn that it is today.
Yeah. And it was also a stop on the Pony Express
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
for a time.
For a time. And it stayed, even after the fort was gone, it stayed a post. And it stayed a post because they had one of the only sets of keys to those bags on the Pony Express.
Wow.
So the camp itself, because Buchanan sent all these men, right? And to quell this whole uprising and nothing happened, it became known as Buchanan's Blunder. And it ended up costing the government millions of dollars for them to come out to Utah for nothing.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I've got about, when I was doing my research, it was like $4 million.
Wow.
Yes.
Which is 1860s
So-
money. That's for inflation, that's what?
Who knows? I don't even know.
Probably $1 billion today.
So the $4 million was in supplies.
Oh, that's right.
So when the soldiers left, they had all this stuff.
And they had to sell it.
And they had to sell it because they couldn't all take with them. And yeah, it was about $4 million in supplies that the Mormons were able
That's
to
right.
buy for about $100,000.
Dang.
Oh my gosh. Which, yes.
pennies on
Pennies.
Pennies on the dollar. So I bet if you look at it now, the money, $4 million due to inflation from 1861 to today would be probably close to $1 billion.
Ridiculous, right?
That is
Absolutely
crazy.
ridiculous.
So just think of all the money that the government
All because
all because of
Well, and also, though, I think the president at the time also was like, this is going to make distraction from what's actually going on right now with the slavery and the Civil War starting and, getting all that going. And I'm sure it was like, this is perfect. This is going to be a great distraction
Yeah.
from what's going on in the South. So I wonder if that was a huge part in like, oh, you saying there's an opportunity for this to
Could've
kind
been.
of be put on the back burner, then okay, we're going to take it.
right.
Yeah.
Kind of
Well-
is what goes on today still.
Yeah, a little bit, right?
A lot.
Distractions, government misspending.
Right.
Don't
right.
look over here. Don't look over here while I just
Don't look at
blunder
the
this.
real problem.
Yeah, don't look at
Let's-
the man behind the curtain. Look at this over here, shiny.
One interesting thing. There's one interesting thing about Camp Floyd. So those of you who know about the Mountain Meadow Massacre, we talked about that on our Anson Call episode. There were I believe it was 4 survivors of the Mountain Meadow Massacre. They were all children. As they were when they were taken away from the site and they were brought elsewhere, they actually were brought to Camp Floyd before they were taken out.
Oh wow.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Huh.
interesting.
So there's that little bit of ominous history associated to Camp Floyd.
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Just another layer
Yeah.
to
Just another layer to the craziness that is
right.
that area.
Yeah.
So the Stagecoach Inn operated until 1947, and it kind of fell into disrepair after that. But in the 60s, it was restored and reopened as a state park. And the same for the schoolhouse, the Fairfield School District House. That was also restored and added to the park.
So, fun fact. I already said this before, but that the person who designed the schoolhouse was the same one that designed Petite Neat in Payson
That's
that
so
we're going to go
cool.
investigate.
Which you can kind of see, actually.
You can. They look very, very similar. It's just a much smaller scale
Yeah.
because the one in Fairfield is just a big single room. I mean, you walk through the doors and it's just that skinny little open hallway,
Yep.
right? That you have the doors that on either side or the
Yep.
door frames that on either side that you can walk into this just big open room.
Yeah.
Like the
Big
well,
square room.
Yes.
Right.
Big.
But Petite Neat is, 3 stories.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So the Fairfield Schoolhouse actually had a gymnasium attached to it that was fell apart and was demolished off of it. So at one point it was a little bit
much
bigger,
Mhm.
but yeah, now it's back to the way it looked.
I would like to have seen it back then.
I would have
Right?
too.
Right. I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It was built in what, 1889?
I have
I-
that.
96?
1898.
Oh, I was off.
We're all wrong.
Yeah. Which
So it was built to replace an old Adobe schoolhouse. They just needed a bigger one.
Well, here's what's crazy though is that so when the original schoolhouse was there, right? That's back when Camp Floyd was itself, and it had a population of 7,000 people, and that 3,000 of those were soldiers. So the 4,000 civilian population around this camp. There had to have been more kids there to use a tiny one-room schoolhouse.
I thought that too. Yeah.
But do you know how many kids were there?
I did not find like that information on how many kids would have gone through there.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that, right?
Well, I wonder if they did it like how, okay, this time this section of kids are going to come, and then at this time the next section of kids are going to come to make it
Yeah.
more useful.
Maybe, yeah.
Kind of like in kindergarten these days where you have the morning
There's
class in the
AM and
afternoon.
PM.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it only served until like 1937.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they built a bigger one. So
Right.
maybe it was too small to begin with.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
I bet
entirely
they very
possible.
much
Underestimated.
underestimated. I was
Yeah.
like, under what?
But, the Carson family had 9 kids. They had a ton of kids. So not just one family that founded the area. So you got to figure, like, they had to have been having more
Well, and I
more
also
kids, right?
wonder how many people actually had their kids going to school
Right.
versus working on
Working
the
on the
farm.
farm
And yeah. So who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what other structures do we got?
So we also, let's stay with the schoolhouse just for a minute. After it was shut down as a school, it was used for community and religious purposes until the 60s. And then, like I said, it fell into disrepair, was restored and added to it. But I did a little digging and I tried to find like if there were any deaths or anything associated with the schoolhouse. And what I found was that they actually used the schoolhouse for funerals.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Really?
And I found one that was interesting. So, cousins Reba McKinney and Nora Carson, they died one day apart. Reba on December 8th and Nora on December 9th, both in 1922 of heart trouble, was what the obituary said. Reba was 7 and Nora was 10. Their double funeral was held in the schoolhouse.
Oh.
Now,
Sad.
I found that interesting because there are reports of a young girl in the schoolhouse.
So did you ever pick up Nora's middle name?
No.
Okay. I'm just
Um,
curious.
I mean, I may have, but I didn't write it down.
Okay.
Because we got some.
We'll get to
Yeah,
that.
we'll get there.
We'll
See?
get there.
That's why I noted that because I thought that's kind of interesting. And, I mean, we know as paranormal investigators that just because there was a funeral there doesn't mean this
Yeah.
is Nora's ghost.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Totally.
But it's one of those things that makes you think about the
Makes
connection.
you like, maybe that could possibly be connected.
Right.
Yep.
You like, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's always part of it, right? But the other thing too we always think of too is that someone has to die there, and that's
Right.
not necessarily
No,
No.
Ghosts roam.
they do.
true. They do.
They absolutely do.
See, and that's what surprises me is why do people think that they're stuck in one spot? Sometimes because we roam.
Right.
I mean, we still walk around and go places, and we don't stick around in one spot. Why would that change?
right.
Except for in 2020.
Yeah.
I mean, most of us just kind of hovered in one spot.
Can you imagine if we were stuck into a haunted house?
Right.
I mean, for us, that would be pretty
That'd
dang
be pretty
awesome.
cool.
Right.
But for everybody else, they'd probably be freaking out.
All right. So the other place is the cemetery. And I don't know if you want to go into that now or save that a
let's
little
go
bit
into
later.
that.
All right. So the cemetery is a big hot mess.
Yep, it is.
And
It's a super mess.
It was a super mess. So nobody really knows how many people are buried in and around the cemetery
and who they are.
and who they are. Right.
Exactly, yeah.
So it was thought that there were 84 people buried in and around the cemetery. Right. The original wooden headstones were burnt down they believe they were burned down in a wildfire in like the early 1900s. So, and then the documentation
Mm-hmm.
is long gone as well.
Trashed.
Yeah, so no idea. Around the 60s, the American Legion, believing that there were 84 people buried there, they put up evenly spaced headstones in the cemetery to make it look like your traditional cemetery, right? And they were just placed willy-nilly. They were just placed around to make it look like it was a cemetery. And they were put there just to commemorate the people that they believed were buried there. Now, the people may or may not have been buried there. It was basically just a guessing game. And when researchers finally got in to do the research, they found that the majority of the people that were attributed to being buried there had nothing to do with Camp Floyd, were never even in Utah, and died
geez.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So,
Hot mess.
Hot mess.
Hot mess.
So finally, in 2009, they brought out ground-penetrating radar, and they found 35 burials in the cemetery proper. And then a guy named Curtis Allen did his own research, and he found actual names of people who were buried there. So in 2011, the markers from the 60s were all taken down, and stones were placed on the 35 burial sites that they found. They just placed stones that said unknown.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they don't know who's
Because they don't know who's who, but they wanted to say we did find graves here or
Right.
here.
And they're kind of sporadically placed.
They're very
They are.
sporadically
They are
placed.
not in any straight line.
Oh,
or
no.
No. And then there is a marker that is outside of the cemetery that lists the names of those who, that through the research, they do believe were buried there.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, not absolutely certain. But we know that there are more there because farmers have actually uncovered human remains and tilling up their lands
Nearby.
Oh, wow.
Right.
So much bigger than what they
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. And part of the reason why they don't know, I mean, some of this stuff, obviously the records were junk back then, but the other thing too is some of these people that are listed as potential burials in the cemetery actually died before the fort was built or died during the building of the fort. And so like the cemetery wasn't actually there. I mean, they just started burying people in a field essentially.
Right. Yeah.
So, and the interesting thing about the cemetery is there's 33 single graves and one double.
Yep. One double grave. Yep.
Which we've always wondered when we've gone there is like, why'd they put two
double?
people in the same hole? Like the place is huge.
I know. There's plenty of extra space.
Exactly.
That is kind of odd.
Yeah. Now I know in some cities in some areas that double burials and even triple burials is a commonplace because they've run out of room.
Right. They didn't know that there's someone who was buried there, and when they were digging it up, they saw it and said, well, we'll just add him to this grave anyway.
I don't want to dig another one. So
We've already gone through the trouble.
throw
Just
'em on
throw
top.
them in there.
Yeah.
Yep. So I always find the cemetery actually a very sad place because there are so many unknowns there. It's sad that you can't actually, say goodbye to a loved one or anything like that.
Or just be acknowledged, right? You think of all the people that are left unacknowledged.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But even when you just go there, you just feel,
It's
What's the energy?
yeah, it's like a heavy
You-
sadness. It's
you feel
kind
it.
of really
Kind of presses down on you.
mhm.
right.
Yeah.
It's definitely different than other cemeteries I've been in. Normally, I'll go into a cemetery and I'm like, oh, this is my happy place. You know,
I
it's just so
agree.
calm and peaceful,
Yep.
and like that's where I used to go on walks with my babies when I was young. Anyway,
You're still young.
12 years ago, and now, but you walk into this one and it just feels kind of pressing.
Yeah, I agree.
So
I love cemeteries too, but I could not spend too much time in this one. I actually had like a really a visceral reaction to being
Yeah.
in there that I had to leave.
yeah, which happens sometimes when you just get that overwhelming feeling. But yeah, it was just kind of it's a great place to go see and go visit and kind of experience, and very solemn.
Yeah.
Right.
Very solemn. Interesting enough. So there's on that plaque, they list people that have died. They also list how they died.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about
Yeah.
that.
Which is so
Yes.
interesting
It's
to me.
It's
Yeah.
super interesting. So here's a couple things to look at. Like there's other things like someone died of pneumonia, right? Which you would
common.
expect. There were someone he lost an Oregon Trail. I know it's a bad joke, but the guy died of dysentery. so it's a real thing, people. People did die of dysentery. But there's two things that actually are a little surprising. There are several murdered victims.
hmm
And the one that I think is the saddest is there are several suicides.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and you wonder, I mean, think about it. Back then, they didn't have medication to help you through
Right.
that
They
stuff. And if you're doing military and you're seeing things that you wish you never saw and experience things that you didn't want to experience, I can
Traumatizing.
imagine.
Like
Right.
Utah.
Whatever.
Well, no,
We're awesome.
But think about this. I mean, think about it from this avenue, right? They go from, I mean, these are the armies of the East, right? The colonial armies. And so they're coming from DC, Philadelphia, like places that are populated, like there's stuff to do, right? And where do you get sent? Not Salt Lake City, because there'd been stuff to do in Salt Lake City. No, you get sent 40 miles west of Salt Lake City into
Desert Valley.
in Desert Valley. What do you got to do? Nothing.
Nothing.
So
Right.
you can drink, you can smoke. There was a lot of debauchery going on in those areas, right?
Of course.
But those are all very unfulfilling things. And so now you have isolation, and drug abuse or alcohol abuse and other things. And it becomes a very lonely and sad scenario.
And you're away
Sure.
from family. And,
Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
you're dealing with like extreme heat in the summer, extreme cold in the winter. There's dust everywhere. A lot of the buildings did not have floors. They were just dirt floors.
Yeah.
It's not insulated
Not
like
in-
how
yeah.
they are now. So, yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. Horrible place to
Or
be.
Yeah.
if you do have dysentery and you're
Right.
to the point where you don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, right. But yeah, it's such a. If you guys have, our listeners, if you have never been out there, I'd highly recommend going out to Camp Floyd and seeing the cemetery and those pieces. If you go into the commissary, there's a wonderful video you can watch and sit down and watch, and it talks about the Great Mormon Rebellion and it talks about Camp Floyd, and it's actually a very good educational 30-minute video, and you can just watch it for free.
And they do reenactments out there every so often as well.
They do. Which I want to catch. I want to catch some
I do
guys
too.
I've
lighting
actually
off cannons and
I've actually caught
artillery
reenactors
drills.
out there and chatted with them for a while. It was really
Oh,
fun.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So, yeah, that's a little bit of the history of Camp Floyd and the cemetery and the surrounding area of Fairfield. But now let's get into the fun part.
Oh yeah.
So,
Ghosts.
exactly. So we got the pleasure of going out there with our friends from Broken Wings Paranormal, investigated back earlier this year. We'll just go that.
It wasn't that long ago. Come on.
That was March or it was
April.
March.
Was it March?
It was March.
Yeah, it was March.
Okay, longer
Yeah.
than I thought.
Yeah, it was a while ago. Yeah, and so we had an absolutely wonderful time.
We did.
I think we'll start off in the schoolhouse.
Yeah, so we started there and we were trying to set up. We were kind of all sitting up in the front, right? And legit, I push record, and within 47 seconds, I get a amazing EVP.
You do.
I do.
Do tell. No.
Do you want to listen?
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
Just set this up real quick. Just set this up real quick.
Okay, so you hear it. What it is, I think what it is, once we entered that room, they were like, Daniel, run.
Yeah.
And then you hear a kid go, okay, afterwards. So let's hear it one more time.
Just set this up real quick.
So I think it's them. I think it's this male adult telling this child to run because we're coming into the room
Right.
and setting up. But yeah, it was very awesome start to it. And the
It's a
funny
great
thing
start.
is I didn't even notice it because we were going around and setting everything up so quick.
Right. In my head, what I see when I listen to this is I see a kid just standing there, like looking up at us as we're walking in and just staring at us setting up. And the adult's like, Daniel, run. And he's like, huh? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Right. Why do I have to go?
Yeah.
This is interesting.
I know. Then right after that, I moved in to the back of the room, and I've got my recorder in the back, and they're up in the front, and they're doing. What was it? What equipment were you setting up?
The Flux 2.
The Flux, yeah.
Yeah.
We had some issues with it that night, so
Yeah, it was really strange. Just,
it's acting odd.
yeah.
Well, it just instantly started making weird noises and not
Weird
doing-
patterns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then I think your sensor stopped working.
Yeah,
It was throwing some fits at me.
yeah.
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 And then, so I got the dowsing rods out and because I was sensing like a female, right? And I was like, is your name Emily? And crossed it for yes. So what we do is with the dowsing rods, we have them cross them for yes or spread them apart for no. And I got cross for yes. And then I asked her to tap the rods together for how old she was. And she said 10. And then I said, okay, tap them and let us know how many spirits are in the room. And she said 7. And that 4 of them were soldiers and 3 were kids. And that she had a twin sister there.
Yep.
So we heard multiple little kid voices.
Yeah.
And Jamie started hearing
Marching.
I didn't hear the marching.
I didn't hear it either.
Like it was outside, and I would hear it off and on the whole time we were in the schoolhouse. It wasn't constant. It was just like sporadic.
Yeah, but it
was like regimented marching of many feet, many booted feet.
yeah.
Wow, you wonder if that's like residual coming through.
I believe, if anything, it is very
That's
much residual.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had my ovulus on too, and when I went back and checked the logs, and I didn't catch it at the time, but when I went and looked back at the logs of the ovulus and what words it had spit out marching.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
At
Which was
one
quite
point.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's really
Kind of
cool.
corroborates what I was hearing that night. So
And I even did go outside too because
Yeah.
I mean
just to make sure.
Fairfield is an inhabited city. I mean,
And there are houses around it.
yeah.
There are.
They're
Yeah.
not super close, but they're
No.
around it.
Yeah.
But they're close enough to the schoolhouse that you could have
hear.
some interference.
Sure.
and
Totally.
just, living people doing their thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. And, maybe someone's watching, I don't know, I want to say Save a Private Ryan.
I was
That's
gonna
not-
say that
That's
too.
not the movie I was thinking. That's not the movie. Full Metal Jacket. Like, I doubtful, but I mean, there's lots of marching in Full Metal
Right.
Jacket. And so they were playing it obscenely loud,
It'd have to be.
right? But, I mean, there's always the possibility.
Of course.
Well, and we were hearing kids. And so you did also go out there to check to see if there were any kids out running around or playing. It was really late.
Yeah.
It was already dark outside.
But you never know.
But you just
Right.
never know. I mean,
Yeah.
you're kind of out in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Kids are probably fine running around and
But that's just good investigation. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? To like cover your bases and check it out. And
because you want to debunk it. You don't want to
Right.
be like, oh, everything's a ghost. Like,
Right.
Right.
That is just not how we run. So you did go out there and do that, but there was nothing outside.
Except for a cow.
Yeah.
But the cow's not going to.
We didn't even hear it moo.
No,
Like-
we did not.
So there wasn't really anything out there. And it had been getting a little quiet in the schoolhouse for a little bit. Josh, you were like, for there being 7 of you in here, it sure is quiet.
Yeah.
And then 5 seconds after that, we get just a little knock. It's really quiet. So I don't think we're going to play it, but it's just really quiet. But we did get a knock right after that. And for us, I think it was louder than it was.
yeah.
It was definitely audible in the room that you could hear someone
Yes.
knock.
But from my recorder, it was too far away that it didn't sound super loud, but you could still hear it.
Yeah, and I picked that up on my recorder as well, but it's still a very quiet
Yeah.
knock.
Yeah, and it was in the hallway. And we did get some footsteps that we would hear. I only got an EVP with one single footstep, so not grand enough to play, but also in the hall. And so I got my butt up and I went to the hall and I sat down in a pile of bugs, and it was so disgusting. They were
it
all
was
dead.
bugs.
I remember that.
Oh, so gross.
You didn't sit there long.
No, I got up real quick. And then I went over, grabbed a chair, sat down, and started doing some EVP work and stuff because for me, I'm like, all right, if there's a ghost to be heard, I want to be where they're at
Mhm.
and try to get that stuff. We heard you had footsteps in front of you, Josh.
Yep. Yeah, I heard them and the digital recorder picked them up too, but it was like just 2. It was boom, boom.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we heard a man's voice that Josh says, like, switch, switch. And then we hear this man's voice.
Switch, switch. You want to hear that?
Play it one more time. It's right after you say switch, switch.
Switch, switch.
Yeah, you can't make out what it's saying.
But you can definitely hear it. It's a
You
male
can-
voice.
Oh, yeah.
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 But yeah.
Yeah. To me, it sounds a little bit like pain.
Or bang or
Or
hang or
Yeah.
some of
Something
the-
similar to
some of
that.
the
Yeah.
A, like
Yeah.
that short A.
Ain. AIN.
but
Yeah.
enough to seem like a response to what you were saying.
Well, so for those of you who follow The Simpsons, the switch witch is
I know. No, go
Yeah.
ahead.
it's a witch that takes all your candy and gives you healthy stuff.
That's a nasty trick.
All right. Yep.
So then later, we're all sitting there in the silence and we hear this. Was that one of you guys?
What'd you hear?
Like a zipper. Yeah, so, I mean, I obviously sound half dead and I'm asleep. Like, I'm tired. 'Cause we're just sitting there. Because, like, after you sit there, it can kind of get a little bit boring,
Yeah.
you know?
And it was so quiet.
It was so
well,
quiet.
and a lot of times that's the reality of paranormal investigation.
It
Yes.
is.
Right.
It is. And sometimes you're going to get stuff that you didn't know you're going to get. But
Mhm.
anyway, so yeah, we heard this zipper, but it was odd because they didn't have zippers
Right.
back then.
well, and
It was
I wasn't
buttons.
wearing anything that was zipper.
None of us were moving. We were
yeah,
like,
we were all stationary.
And,
yeah.
Yeah.
And I had our backpack.
Yeah, but you
With our
weren't
stuff.
even in it. It was
No.
a couple chairs down from where you were even sitting.
Yeah, I was just sitting on the floor.
Yeah.
So I don't know where that zipper sound came from, but nobody was around us. It was just us three in that building.
Mhm. Zip.
And a little zip.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we'll play it again one more time for you guys.
Was that one of you guys?
It's so cool.
Yeah.
Like, could that be anything else other than a zipper? I mean,
It sounds like a zipper to me, but
I
Yeah.
have no idea what else. If that's not a zipper and it's something normal, like
like what?
that's a very good question because this is an old schoolhouse, one room schoolhouse. It's got 4 blackboards, about 40 chairs,
Mhm.
desks in it,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and maybe a dozen folding chairs around it. Like there's just nothing in there.
That's about it.
The only
Yeah.
other thing I can think of is like a jacket, like when you scratch your hands on a
Oh,
on a
yeah.
jacket. So that's the only other sound that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I had a sweater on.
I had a t-shirt.
Yeah.
hoodie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
So we
we
didn't,
weren't even in anything. We didn't have much for zippers on even.
we were not zipper abundant.
In fact,
No.
We just
in
weren't.
fact, I had 0 zippers.
Yeah.
So it wasn't us.
Yeah.
So anyway, but one of the things at the very end, we're sitting there and it's like, again, it's pretty quiet. And I just start talking and I'm so mad that I did. And I'm like, it's pretty silent or like something like that. And as soon as I'm saying that, I catch another EVP. It sounds like a female. I don't know. It's just kind of like a squeak, which sometimes you'll get. You'll get those really high pitched, quiet little squeaks.
Mhm.
And you can't make it out, but here's that one.
It's like silent. There's like nothing.
Yeah.
It's
It's,
like
just
silent.
under. Yeah. It's just under that first word you
Uh-huh.
say and you hear it. It's real quick, but it's there.
Play it one more time.
It's like silent. There's like nothing.
It's like,
Yep.
And there's a huh, and then a huh.
Mhm.
There's 2 of them.
Yeah.
oh, I didn't notice.
Yeah, there's a second one. It's about half a second after the first.
And it's amazing how often that happens though. Like where you're quiet for a while and then you start talking and then you get something underneath your voice
Right.
Oh, yeah.
there.
It's
Yeah.
always so frustrating.
It
Because you're
is.
sitting in silence forever.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
It's like they had all the time.
No kidding. Why'd you wait till then?
Yeah. And I mean, I had a personal experience in there too. It was right after we got in there and we sat down, right? I got set up some equipment. I sat down and then I get this, hey, over my right shoulder, which would have been to where the entranceway was.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a digital running at the time.
Well,
Of
no, we were
course.
just going in.
We were just going in. I was just getting stuff set up. So it was like, well, that was really cool. But
Okay,
you know,
Kino. I mean, if we go investigate that place again, we got to push record before we enter that building.
Right.
Right.
Because it starts from the beginning.
exactly. Record when you're on the outside.
Well, the thing
Yeah.
is, when I used to carry digital with me, I'd let it record the entire time in
Mhm.
between areas and everything.
Yeah.
I always did that.
Just because we've gotten random EVPs
Yeah.
transitioning between
So many
rooms.
times. Yeah.
Well, you guys experienced a lot of stuff that there are claims that are legit claims from a lot of other people of women, and people sometimes attribute her to the school marm.
Mm.
You know, whether that's true or not.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's easy. I think it's an
Right.
easy.
Yeah.
She
Easy
must have been the school
assumption.
teacher, right?
Yeah.
And children, especially
Yep.
girls.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
And we did get an EVP, and I won't play it. I might be able to get it up on social media after this. But so Elisa was asking what this gal's favorite class was. She's like,
Mhm.
"What's your favorite class?" And then Elisa starts naming off classes. But there's an EVP of a girl, and she goes, "Gym."
So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
And
cool.
to know that there was a gymnasium that was attached to it
Yeah.
that's no longer there. That's pretty fun.
yeah.
Yeah.
At one
Yeah.
time, that was a bigger building than what it was.
Yeah.
Because I think we first found it. I was talking to Jamie about it, and she's like, "There's not even a gym there. Like, how? Where did they
Because
have
I didn't
gym
know.
class?
There was.
Right?
Not now, but at
Yeah.
one time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I didn't know that at the time.
I didn't either. Mm-mm.
So that's pretty fun.
Yeah. And as it's so funny how investigation nights go, right? You can have one place that's feels pretty dead and quiet, like the schoolhouse.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then you go to another place and you have probably the funnest time the entire night.
It rocked. I'm sorry. It,
It
just
was
did.
way fun.
And that for us was the commissary, which is now the museum.
Yeah.
So why don't you lead us off with that one, Jamie?
No, that's okay. I'm going to let you tell it. I'm just going to sit here and laugh.
So we set up in there. We decided to do the Estes method.
That's one of my favorite ways to communicate.
I'm
Mine
really
too.
liking
Legit
it.
Yeah.
every time.
Me
Yeah.
too. Me too. That is.
We've had some good stuff with that.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
It's
And-
amazing.
The first place we ever tried it was Petite Neat,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and I was the one that did it.
Uh-huh.
Didn't work very well.
No.
The next place we tried it
Benson.
was Benson, yeah, and we used and Elisa did it,
Yeah.
and now Elisa's our go-to Estes method person.
Because I think it's something that you have to practice, because I feel like the more that I do it, the more I can pick out voices
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
other than
The words. And,
than the radio,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, for those of you that don't know what that is, what it is you have headphones on, like noise canceling headphones, and you're listening to the radio, and it's scanning really fast. I like to do the radios backwards,
Mhm.
scan the stations backwards. And when you're doing this, it's going fairly quickly. They're scanning the stations fairly quickly. And so you've got to really listen to voices that are not from the radio. And a lot of the times these voices will go through multiple radio stations.
Yep.
And it's not just one. And it's that same voice that goes through those multiple radio stations where that is not even possible.
That's right.
And especially going backwards.
Mhm.
And so we like to do that and see if, as I'm listening to it, or whomever has the headphones on, the other person that doesn't have headphones on is asking questions and having a conversation. And then the person with the headphones on is just spitting out whatever they hear, and they don't know if it's making sense or not, because they can't hear that person asking questions.
Yep.
Yep.
And they don't know what to respond to.
Yes.
Sometimes there's silence, and sometimes
Sometimes it gets good.
Right.
you get full on
It
conversations
gets
that
good,
turn out
right.
like this one did.
It started like Elisa put on her headphones, and we didn't even start yet, like asking questions, and it started.
Oh, it was instant.
That's
Oh,
cool.
Explanative right out
Yeah.
of the gate.
The
It was like-
first thing, the first thing a spirit ever says to us in that building is "F you,"
Yeah.
and it's
Yep.
like,
We're
wow.
in for it. We are in for it now.
Oh, it's on.
yeah. And here's the funny thing: we're not provokers, right?
No, no,
we're just
no.
not. But we do get ornery, and we do get spicy.
Rarely.
Rarely.
Super rare.
Super
I honestly,
rare.
I think this is like one of the first times I've ever seen Jamie a bit spicy.
Yeah. And for whatever reason, Jamie took this as a personal challenge.
Well, here, let's put a little background to this. Okay. So Jamie's diabetic,
Mhm.
and she has a sensor.
Yeah,
that-
Dexcom
Uh-huh.
sensor. Yeah.
and it helps her with her insulin. Okay. So this sensor pad fell off, right? And you couldn't find it.
Oh no, I thought it was gone.
Yeah.
Like the transmitter was gone.
and for you, that's
That's upsetting.
very
Yeah.
upsetting.
Yeah.
Because you need that.
Yeah.
You didn't know how long it had been gone for.
Mm-mm.
And we were just sitting down and you're like, oh crap,
Now
like-
what?
this is gone. And didn't know where it was. And so, but I had put these, I didn't even know because I had the headphones on.
Yeah.
I didn't know that this was going on at all.
Nope.
And I'm just waiting for something to pop through. And that's when I got the FU.
Mm-hmm.
And then Josh was like, are you a private? And Jamie's like, or are you a prick?
Well, Jamie had a response before that, though.
I don't remember.
I don't
I just
remember.
remember I had fun with
Yeah.
it for whatever reason.
So her response was, yeah? Well, F you too.
Oh, maybe it was.
And from there,
It goes downhill.
it was on.
So then Jamie goes, are you stuck? And I said, I guess. I don't know. And then I say, what's on you? And then I say, it fell off.
Oh my gosh, that's insane.
Yeah.
And Jamie goes, oh, that's my CGM sensor, your continual glucose monitor.
Yeah.
And then I said, I forced it. So Jamie's like, you better not have. I needed that. But then you're like, well, it was coming off earlier, so I don't even believe you.
Yeah.
Right. And then Josh is like, did you like visiting the prostitutes? And Jamie's like, were you a prostitute? And then I said, yeah, it was funny. And then you and Josh, Jamie and Josh, start talking about how there were a lot of men that hung out there, because it goes without saying, right? Because of all the men, like the army that came.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, get over it.
Oh wow.
Just sassy. This person was just
He
sassy.
was
Just
sass.
Honoring.
Sassy.
Just honoring.
And Josh was like, I don't think they like women. And then Jamie's like, suck it. And then I said it right after, I was like, eat an apple. It was the weirdest. That was the weirdest one I have ever had doing an Essie's method.
I feel like I should Google is eat an apple an insult
Right,
in the
because-
1800s.
It was from a male, and this male said it very mean. Like, and I was like, I don't think I'd ever heard that word ever in a mean phrase. And she was like, well, you know what I want to do with that apple? I'm just like, I'm going to take that and put it up your backside. And then it was funny because then a girl pops in during this Essie's method, and she says, you've got this. Like, she's backing Jamie up. Like, come
Yeah.
on, Jamie. It was so funny. And then Jamie's like, well, thanks for backing me up. And then it just gets quiet. And Josh is like, well, it's suddenly quiet in here. And Jamie's like, it's because they have no power here. And then I said, oh, whatever. And then after that, it kind of like ended it
Yeah.
after that. And then I said, a female came on and was like, how many? And then a male said 20. So, and then it just stopped after that.
Wow.
So I did hear like 3 voices coming through, a female that was backing Jamie up, and then an older male that was causing all the ruckus,
Mhm.
and then a younger male that had just piped in every once in a while that didn't really have any conversation in what we were talking about. It was kind of like random stuff. This was just the stuff, because there was other things that came through, but this was just the stuff that made sense.
Right.
Yeah.
But this was most of it.
Yeah.
There, you do have random spirits that will pop in and they'll start a whole nother conversation, but it wasn't anything that we were talking about. And sometimes you'll get them where they're talking to each other,
Right.
Yep.
which is super interesting. and fun.
I've had that experience. That was really crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where I think, how many? 20, because they were 2 different people
Right.
Yeah.
talking to each other.
You're talking for 2 different spirits. That's
Yeah. Yeah. So, which was quite interesting. It was really cool. And I don't know if that particular thing was what was making you, Josh, feel uncomfortable. Remember that? And you walked out.
I left. Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
possible. I don't know. There was something about that place at that time that I did not feel comfortable. Like, I actually made Jamie mad. She's like, sit down. You're pacing.
You
And
were
I
walking
was.
around a lot.
Yeah.
And I was.
pacing.
And I felt very unsettled and very just, I don't know. It wasn't bad or anything. It just felt very unsettled, like antsy. And so I did. I left the building and I went out to the Coke machine, actually, which is on the side of the building.
Yeah. And then when you came back in, because I had taken the headphones off doing the SE's method, I had taken them off. And Josh, when you came back in, you, in my mind, for some reason, because it's dark, right?
Yeah.
I saw you as a different person. Same, still you, but I saw you with like a comb over and glasses.
It's your future self. It's your
and-
dad.
Oh no, it gets better. An ugly Christmas sweater.
It was.
No way.
It was. Yes. Yep. Which this is the first time this has ever happened during one of our investigations
Yeah.
where we've had someone get piggybacked.
Yeah, and it was real quick, right? It was like
Yep.
you walked
Split
in,
second.
I saw it for a split second, and I blinked, and it was gone, right?
Mhm.
So we're like, okay, let's get out the rods. Let's see what we can find out. And so Jamie gets out the rods, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to describe you. Tell me if I'm wrong or if I'm right. And so I describe what I saw on Josh, and I got everything was yes. So I got if there was a man that died in his, because comb over 70s.
Yep.
That's what I was thinking. And we got yes. But the thing is, as soon as you got out the rods, they were going crazy.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? And they were, you're like, oh, they feel heavy. And they were just,
It felt like somebody was actually pushing down on them.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they were just going nuts. And you're like, hold still, you know? And I'm like, do brown hair? Yes. Side part? Yes. Mustache? Yes. Glasses? Yes. I mean, and this is also the very typical 70s looking person,
Yeah.
right? But this, I'm just saying what I saw. And then I said, Christmas sweater? Yes. And I was like, why is he wearing a Christmas sweater? I'm like, that's like super odd because this is not the time for Christmas, right?
No,
Or-
we're in springtime.
Right. I was like, did you die during Christmas time? And it said yes. And then there was a family that was watching, that lived close by, that was watching a big, huge screen TV.
It was
When-
actually the house next door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they had their blinds open so you could see their TV in the living room. And so like instantly that came in my mind and I was like, are you related to anybody that lives around here? And he said yes. And I think, Josh, you were like, is it the family next door?
Yep.
And it was like, yes. And we asked if there was anything that he needed or anything like that. And then we helped him move on.
Yeah.
But that was quite interesting.
It really was.
Because I think what it was is that he probably saw us walking, because we walked to the school.
And we walked right by that house twice.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I wonder if because we walked past it going to the school, walked past it going back over to the museum. And so I wonder if he was like, oh,
Here's my chance.
I'm going to hitchhike off this again.
Yeah.
And as soon as Josh comes out, he's like, perfect opportunity to go and walk in with them
Yep.
and start this. And so definitely had nothing to do with the museum, but helped someone that was
In need of help.
Mhm.
And
That's
it's-
really cool.
And
Yeah.
it really isn't the first time that spirits have sought us out for help.
Oh, no. Uh-uh.
They know when you're coming, and they also will talk to the other spirits.
Mhm.
And so the other spirits could have possibly said, hey, what's going on with those people? Oh, they're here to investigate us. And so this gentleman was like, those are the people I need.
It's my opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've found that. I mean, we've had instances where spirits have sought us out just to be able to move on.
Right.
Even here at
Mhm.
home.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yes.
Totally.
Yeah.
So, and that pretty much rounded out our investigation of the museum. I mean, we did go into the carriage house afterwards. We just didn't have a good investigation time in there for the most part.
Yeah, it got interrupted a little bit.
Quite a bit.
It was hard because there's no insulation.
Mm-hmm.
So we were hearing a lot outside,
Yeah.
which was hard. We were hearing like beeping of cars and people talking and when you do go investigate and you're with your friends and stuff, you're going to be loud sometimes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you're going to talk and you kind of forget that other people are investigating in close
Right.
spaces and close by. I mean, I have been guilty of it before.
Oh, we've
We all
all
have.
been guilty.
I've had
Yeah.
I've been told to shut up before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're interfering with our investigation.
Yeah.
Shut up. Got it.
Way to
Sorry.
be blunt. Yes. So, but that's what we were getting. And we didn't really have a ton of time. We did get some pretty cool like REM pod action though.
We did. So the stagecoach area, it's kind of it feels like two separate buildings, really kind of conjoined into one, because there's this parlor area on the downstairs area. But really, the only way to get to the parlor area is to go through all the sleeping quarters and the house, the main house, this deck, and then into the sleeping areas where the inn was, and then you got to go down these stairs. So we were up where the sleeping area was. That area has kind of got an interesting hole in the wall.
Mm-hmm. It
Bullet
sure
hole
does.
in the wall.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
somebody was
Cleaning.
their gun.
Mm-hmm.
Again, people, if you've never owned a gun, that's okay. But for those of us who've owned guns or been trained in the military, the first thing they teach you to do before you clean your gun is to unload it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this guy didn't unload his gun, and it discharged inside a hotel.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
And it goes through a wall into another person's room where there was someone in the room.
Oh, geez.
That he had just laid down.
Oh, lucky.
Thank goodness.
Yeah,
Just laid down and it goes zipping right past
Been
him.
investigating his ghost.
right.
Right.
Whose pants needed to be changed that night? I bet
Right.
it was both of them.
Probably. Probably. So we're sitting up there and we're kind of doing a EVP session, right? And down in the parlor, there's a REM pod sitting on,
The
Really
organ.
old organ.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
it's a beautiful.
It's like a gothic looking.
Some of those pedal ones.
Oh, it was so cool looking.
yeah.
yeah, it's such a neat thing, right?
My grandparents have one of those in their house.
They
I
do.
love it.
And this is kind of the place where people would hang out and, play games or sing or whatever. This is kind of this is party central for the 1800s.
I mean, if you're going to go anywhere, that's where you're going to go for entertainment.
Yeah.
Right out of
Exactly.
the stagecoach inn.
All right. Play the piano and
Yep.
some
Some
cards.
checkers.
It's checkers. And so we're up there, and then the REM pod goes off down and downstairs, and we're like, "Hey, if you want us to come down, do that again." And it goes off immediately. Just
Well, yeah. And then you ask it, okay, well, if that was really you, do it twice really fast.
yeah,
So then all of a sudden the REM pod goes. "Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo."
It did.
Nice.
Yeah.
yeah. And so we ended up going downstairs, and of course, I mean, this is how investigations go, right?
Yep.
They draw us downstairs, so we're downstairs, and then
Nothing.
quiet.
That's typical. Yeah.
Well, then Jamie starts hearing some female voices upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
So then she heads upstairs
Yeah.
and you started hearing something on the bed. Do you remember that?
Creaking.
Yeah,
Like
but
somebody
somebody getting on the bed.
getting on the bed. But the one room has like the ropes stretched across it, but no mattress.
Mm-hmm. On the bed, yeah.
Yeah. So it was almost like just the residual sounds.
Right.
Like I watched the bed, nothing was moving. Nothing.
Yeah.
But I was hearing as if somebody was getting on the bed. So
Yeah. It's such a neat experience.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
So yeah, that was our investigation there. But Wendi, you've had experiences
Yeah.
at Camp Floyd.
I have. I investigated out there 2014? 2013. 2013.
Okay. A while ago, yeah.
So quite a while ago. Yeah. My niece thought it would be fun. So I didn't have any of my equipment with me. I just kind of took her just to have some fun. But we did have our digital recorder. In the schoolhouse, there were some people that had a flashlight. We were doing the flashlight technique.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't know what the flashlight technique is that you take a flashlight and you unscrew it from the light bulb so that if you tap on it, it turns on and it can turn back off. It's a communication, right? We only had one, which kind of sucks because you want two.
Yeah, you want
a
two.
yes or a no, but we
Mhm.
only had one. And we ended up talking with a little girl. She was, are you a little girl? The flashlight would come on. Thank you. Turn it off. How old are you? And I seem to recall she was that
10?
ish age.
Mhm.
Exactly. She wasn't young and she wasn't a teenager. So,
Yeah.
and that was about it with her. Just those two things. But it just goes to again, it's
Like
you guys-
validates.
validates
Uh-huh.
what a lot of people have out there. But I think the best one was in the stagecoach. So, it was a Pony Express stopover. And I walked into a few people again, doing the flashlight technique. And so I'm like, hey, who you guys talking to? They're like, we're talking to a Pony Express rider. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I said, I said, do you see other Pony Express riders come through? And the flashlight turned on to say yes. So
Cool.
apparently there's still Pony Express riders running through. And one of the guys we were with said, do you like your whiskey? Bet you like to drink. And just in conversation, I responded to him. I said, actually, no, the Pony Express riders could not drink alcohol. Like that was part of the contract. They had to be sharp. And the flashlight, like, bam, right on. And I was like, okay, turn it off. I said, turn it back on if I'm right. Bam, right back on.
How
Nice.
cool
Oh,
is
that's
that?
And I was like, awesome. I said, so are you still delivering mail? And the flashlight came back on. Yes. And I said, all right, next time you're out, have a safe trip and return back safely. And
That's really cool.
it was
So-
really cool.
Is he delivering ghost mail?
I
Like, what is he
know.
delivering?
And that's what I wonder. Are they still in this, this is where you run into those deeper thoughts with
Right.
paranormal, right? With ghosts.
Oh, yeah.
Are they still doing their thing?
Yeah.
At the same time, we're doing our thing. And what does that look like?
Right. And then, okay, so during our investigation, when we were in the schoolhouse, Josh asked a very good question. He asked, do spirits see residual spirits?
Oh, yeah. Actually, I
Mhm.
did
That's
ask
a
that question.
fantastic question.
Yeah. And so it makes me wonder because, I mean, we've come across so many residual and we've come across
Mhm.
so many intelligent spirits. And so it does beg the question, do they see each other? Well, obviously, residual, they're not going to notice. Or,
But do the intelligent
but
ones
do the
see the residual?
intelligent
Yeah.
ones,
Yeah.
do they see the residual?
Yeah.
And would you be freaked out by it? Because, I mean, if you think about it, right, residual is just playing a loop back
Over
and
and
forth,
Over
right?
and over,
again.
same thing
Yeah.
happening.
So imagine sitting there, right, and then watching this dude walk the hallway in this continuous loop all the time.
Mhm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
it would be creepy to watch
What
that.
if you saw yourself?
Oh, my goodness.
So, that's a whole other story. But there are stories. There are stories of people seeing themselves
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
the same room that they're in, but themselves doesn't acknowledge. They just do something and then leave. But
Yes.
Doppelganger style.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of
Right. But imagine, though, being an intelligent haunt, witnessing your
Residual.
residual.
Patterns,
Oh, man.
yeah.
Ooh, I know, right?
Mind blown.
But I thought it was really interesting that he said he sees other Pony Express riders still riding.
Wow.
Yeah, that is really neat.
It was really cool. That was the best. I think one of the best interactions I've ever had in an investigation.
Yeah, that's a pretty good flashlight session.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
That is super cool.
yeah. So Estes method is and flashlights. Those are my two.
That's
my two
awesome.
go-tos.
I
they work
love
every time.
Essie's method.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, we've started using that, pulling that out a lot more
Mhm.
lately.
Yeah.
And our go-to obviously is dowsing rods. We love using those.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like using the flashlights, right?
Right.
You get this instant gratification,
Yes.
and I don't have to worry about looking back through evidence. I already know the answer is yes.
Right. I
Right.
don't have to listen to hours and hours and
Right.
hours of EVPs. Yeah.
Right.
But we
Yeah.
do get answers. And which is always neat when you get an EVP that correlates with
Mhm.
your dowsing rods. And
Right.
then it's like, yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally.
I've started doing like immediate listening to my EVPs because
Doing a live EVP
because
session.
I got so tired of like going home and spending hours and
Listening.
hours
But-
listening.
But
So-
here's the thing, like I did a live EVP session and I still missed
Mhm.
that huge or that like almost class A EVP with the Daniel run.
Yeah.
I still missed that.
Yeah.
How? You know?
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, there was one case where we were up at Fort Douglas and we did a spirit box session, and I had a recorder running at the same time,
Mhm.
and there were 7 EVPs or voices that were missed
Mm-hmm.
that we didn't hear doing it. So it was either with the SB7, we just didn't catch it, right?
Mhm.
Or it was an actual EVP that we didn't hear. I mean, that we wouldn't have heard until
Right.
review. But it's still neat that stuff,
Yeah.
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 that you can still miss stuff.
We were doing an Estes method at Memorial House in Memory Grove, and we also recorded it, which was great because not only were we getting interaction through the Estes method, but when we played back the recorder, we also had the similar responses.
That's so cool.
So yeah, it was really cool.
As a ghost hunter, it always feels so good when you have validating evidence.
100%.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
always nice. Like Emily, we talked about Emily.
Mhm.
I tried to find Emily. But records as they were, there weren't really any good listing of names.
No, which is hard because you do want to tie them if you can,
Yes.
because you'd rather have something of historical value to whatever it is that you're hunting, whatever you're
Yeah,
investigating.
Yep.
And when you can't find it, sometimes you question like, oh man, was that somebody who was actually there? Maybe they were a roamer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I went through the digital newspapers for the whole time that the schoolhouse was open, and I didn't come across any other children named Emily.
Yeah, and she said that she was there before the schoolhouse, which
Okay.
puts her as pioneer. So actually, she said that she was there before the camp. So that would have put her with the original pioneers.
Okay.
Which there wouldn't be.
There wouldn't be because
Any records.
the newspaper out there didn't start until the camp started.
Right.
The newspaper was called Valley Tan, which was also the drink that they were consuming.
Nice.
But that's when the newspaper out there started.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
wasn't anything before that. So
I
yeah,
mean,
we wouldn't have records for
we-
before that.
We wouldn't. And they only name the Carson family and those two other individuals. They didn't name any of the other settlers. And I'm sure, I know they started the town, right? But I'm sure that there were other pioneers who eventually joined them
Right.
before the camp came out.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not easy to find all of these things because records they're just not very good.
And also, if you think about it, like if she died back then and there wasn't like really any place for her to go, and then the schoolhouse shows up, that might have drawn her in. Who knows how long?
Oh yeah,
She's
because
been
she'd
in
be
that
like, oh,
schoolhouse,
other children that look like me.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's tough. It's tough
It
to find
is.
all that stuff out.
Especially when you're going records with Mormon settlers. Then
Yeah.
Yeah.
it gets really hard.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, right? And of course, the other thing is that she could be a pioneer, but died, in another spot. I mean,
Right.
Maybe she died along the trail.
And just kept with everybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, and you just never know.
Those
Nope.
are the mysteries of the paranormal.
That's the stuff I can't wait to really
Right?
learn.
the walkers and how do you get from one place to another. And,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. On a side note, when we finished up our night in the Stagecoach Inn, I actually did find my CGM.
Yes.
It was weird because when I had first realized I lost it and stuff, I was looking all over, like in my sweater and the sleeves and everything, and I didn't come across it or nothing. Like I
I remember.
I
You
was
were
looking
searching.
and I searched for a little while, couple times really. But when we left the museum and went to the Stagecoach Inn, shortly after getting there, I actually found it on my sweater,
That's crazy.
on the
Which was
arm of my
so
sweater.
crazy.
It just random, just right there all of a sudden in plain sight.
Maybe
Well-
someone nicely picked it up for you and gave it back.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Instead of
I'd
the
like-
the a-hole you were
Right?
talking to.
Once
was
I left the
nice lady,
museum,
right?
once I left the museum, hey, there it was, but
But that has actually happened before where things go missing.
mm-hmm.
You don't know where they are. And then
Boom.
they just suddenly
Yep.
appear.
Yeah.
It actually is weird and random, as unrealistic as
Yeah.
that sounds. It has happened and I've witnessed it. Like
Yeah.
it's
So I'd like to think someone or something was being helpful.
right.
Which is always nice.
Absolutely.
Which is
It's
always a nice thought.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So yeah, we've talked for a little bit and covered Camp Floyd in our investigation. We want to thank everyone for sticking with us and listening, and we really hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yes. And again, Wendi, where can they find our listeners find you at?
So you can find me at Demolished Salt Lake Podcast on Facebook and Instagram, or Demolished SL Pod on Twitter. And all of my social media accounts have links to everywhere you can listen to my podcast and find out other information.
Yeah. So go check it out, everybody.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me on. This
Well,
was
thanks for
fun.
being
It was really
here.
exciting.
And Jamie, where can they find us?
You can find us on Facebook, both on the Paranormal Peeps podcast, as well as CPR, which is Cold Spot Paranormal Research.
Yep. And you can find us on Twitter at CPR Paranormal. And you can find us on Instagram at coldspot_paranormal_research. And as always, stay ghosty, my peeps. Thank you for listening to the Paranormal Peeps podcast. You can find us on social media at Twitter at CPR Paranormal, on Facebook at Paranormal Peeps Podcast and Cold Spot Paranormal Research. And you can find us on Instagram at coldspot_paranormal_research.